This month's theme is assess, and the question that I would like us to consider is how do we prepare for the engagement model that is coming into play for us statutorily in September 2021, but this year we have the opportunity to trial and work out how we're going to deliver on it. Maybe you have a lot of children that are working at P1 to 4. Maybe you have a few, maybe you only have one, maybe you don't have any at all. But if you have even only one, you're going to have to complete this statutory process from next September. This year though, we have a chance to trial it and to work out how we're going to do it. At Tapscott, we've been incredibly lucky. Over the last 2 years, we've had our SENCo network meetings facilitated jointly by myself, but also with Diane Rochford OBE, who was chair of the report. So yes, we've been incredibly lucky, and it's given us an opportunity to be really prepared for this process. We prepared in the following ways. First of all, we did a profile of need for each of our schools. So we all went away back to our schools, looked at our register, looked at what we were doing. We brought that back to the next meeting. In that meeting, we then looked at how we could redesign or review the curricula that we had in place so that it was structured with a formal curriculum for those children who could access the national curriculum and a pre-formal curriculum for those children who could not yet do that and were no longer early years, and a semi-formal curriculum for those children who were transitioning between the two. For some of our schools, this was a completely new piece of work, and for others, they already had well-established practices that needed tweaks, needed reviewing. Lastly, we introduced an assessment system that would sit alongside that, an assessment system that would look at the children's progress towards their outcomes rather than a benchmark that was kind of artificially set from outside of our control, so P scales presumably. We actually opted to go, and all of our schools went for the same assessment process. We all went for a program called MAP, and it's an ipsative program. So basically, I'd never heard that word before, but what it means is that what the child's progress was previously and what their progress is now, you compare the two. So the child is always assessed based on their previous progress. And what I've found personally is that for some of our children that we felt were making very, very slow and low progress, it was easy to feel that there was no progress happening at all. And actually, when we took this approach and we went to what their next step was, what do they need to do next, and we looked at their progress towards those areas. So we had an outcome for learning, an outcome for social and emotional, an outcome for communication, interaction, an outcome for physical, sensory. When we actually looked at the 4 broad areas and the outcomes for each of those, they were making progress. It's just, you have to see it, you have to capture it. And this assessment system does capture that progress. At Kensington, we're using this year to trial what we have in place already and to make those final tweaks ready for next September. Most of those tweaks are around how we're recording the evidence to back up our judgment when we submit names eventually next academic year. I'm anticipating we will have 1 or 2 children that we will submit the name for engagement model, but we've taken the approach with the whole of the pre-formal group because actually this approach is relevant to that whole group. So, and it's also much easier to run if it's holistic. If you've got 1 child in a school or 2 children in a school, that can be a real challenge. So actually taking that approach has helped us to do it consistently and it not be a last minute add-on when you get to SATs and submitting and it's quickly let's pull the child's book and work out what engagement model is. It can't work like that. The way that it's set up has to be something that you're doing continuously throughout the year. So I think that could be a potential problem for schools going forward if they've got very few children and they've not got an infrastructure set up that's connected to their curriculum, connected to their assessment system, when they get to actually submit a name, they will find it very difficult to have the evidence to back that decision up. So I would certainly be looking at it this year, even if you only have one child, or potentially next year we'll have one child. It's still worth having a look at it. So at Tapscott, we're hoping to this year embed that practice and be ready for engagement model when it becomes statutory in September 2021. Coming up in January, we will be looking at Reflect. It's always a good time of year to reflect on everything, especially at the moment. There's so much to reflect on. But in a SENCo's calendar, in our year, January is often the slightly quieter, if there ever is, slightly quieter time, and a good time to take that step back and look at how things are going. So that's what we'll be looking at. Please, in the meantime, join us on our social media, particularly our new YouTube channel, which we have launched recently over the last few weeks. Take care, and we'll see you next time.